Hey, this is Jason Kincaid with TechCrunch TV, and I am here with Marissa Meyer. Again, I actually just got a chance to interview her earlier this month, but now I have another chance to ask more questions about all the cool local and other products that you guys are working on. And once again, thank you for coming here to TechCrunch Disrupt.
No problem. I love TechCrunch Disrupt. It's just a really great opportunity for entrepreneurs, and it's just also amazing to see all these launches. I just love that there's this launch vehicle that really helps get companies going.
It's exciting. So here's a question that Mike didn't really touch on at all, and I'm not sure how much detail you're going to get into this. But there has been speculation that Apple is going to do some stuff around maps. There was a lot of controversy as far as location and Wi-Fi data recently, and as part of that, Apple responded indicating that they were doing something related to traffic mapping. And I'm wondering, what's going to change, if anything, for Google's strategy if one day a significant segment of the mobile market, in other words, all the iPhones out there and iPod touches, stops using a Google Maps powered product and transitions over to something that's controlled by Apple? Is there any game plan there? I'm sure there is.
Well, I think I'm not going to speculate as to some of our competitors, but I will say that one thing that we're really learning is that Maps is a huge part of the mobile ecosystem. Today we announced we have 200 million active users of Google Maps for mobile, and we actually now are seeing crossover on the weekends. What I mean by that is we actually see more traffic from mobile than desktop maps on the weekends, and in June we think that's going to cross over permanently, and so we know that it's a really big part of it. That said, we're really proud of some of the innovations that we have been able to roll out. Things like latitude, but also things like vector maps, right? It's not just about tiled maps anymore.
Which aren't actually on the iPhone, as far as
I
know.
And
the
so,
iPhone app is not as
no,
good.
the vector maps, they're beautiful, they're fast, they're 1/100th the data. And the other nice thing that in addition to being able to really quickly drag and drop and move around, because we're transmitting less data, we can do interesting things like caching the map around you. So if your connection suddenly fails, you're not lost sitting there looking at the blue dot, in the middle of an area that isn't filled in. And so there's just a lot of potential.
So here's another question that it's actually been especially important to me out here in New York. I noticed that identifying exactly where I am is not working so well in New York City. And I've got my Wi-Fi enabled, and I know Google has a very powerful database as far as associating where you are using the various Wi-Fi hotspots that are available. Is there some other technology that I'm not aware of, or something that is coming down the line that will be able to improve on these Wi-Fi hotspots, or is this sort of something that is just going to improve over time as you get more hotspots in your database?
I think that the hotspots are something that will help. New York City is particularly challenging because of the tall buildings and the signals bounce around, and it's also hard to get a signal into a really tall building. It really can drain the battery and things like that, and to really understand where a person is. When they say, like, find me and show me on the map, that's actually reasonably hard to do.
Right.
But one of the things here really is about inputs. And so, we really hope that users check in. We have things like loyalty offers in order to promote more people doing that. But the other value in check-ins is it actually causes a person to say,
I'm here.
Actually, I'm here, and we understand then what that signal looks like. And so then later, when someone else is there, we have a better chance of getting it right. And so there really is, like a lot of times in these kinds of systems where they need to learn. What you're really talking about is really a learning problem.
So
they need a lot of input.
I want to make sure I'm clear on that. So these explicit check-ins could eventually help people even who aren't explicitly checking in.
That's right.
It will just make the database better. It will say, well, we have a vague idea, and this coordinates seem to match with this person who explicitly checked in there. Right.
That's right. And so in much way, like for example, like spelling on Google, but today our spell check is so good because more people misspelled before you. They misspelled and they figured out how to get it right. We learned off of that pattern, and now we're really good at spell checking. Same thing, right? If we were, we could guess where you are, but now that you've told us, means that we're more likely to get it right for the next person.
So one of the things you talked about on the panel earlier was about this notion of having serendipitous suggestions based on where you are. And I know you're not going to be able to get into too much detail here, but as far as the timing on when we might expect this sort of thing, are we talking long term, like it's going to be years before the data is there, or is this something we might see, this year or next year, we're going to start having our Android phones say, like, check this out? Or
I think it's probably inside of a 2-year horizon.
Okay.
Because one of the reasons I moved from search to what we call geo is that I just think there's something really special happening. With location, with mobile phones, we can just do things that we couldn't do before because we can understand so much more about what's happening with a person. Where are they? Is it some place where they are frequently? Is it somewhere that they only are very occasionally? And also just getting a little bit of context and what other things they may have been doing. We can start making really good suggestions. We can understand their social context, all of these different pieces. And so a lot of the building blocks you need are in place, and I think this is something that's going to happen quickly.
And once it does start making those projections, again, this might not be something you can get into, do you think they're going to be more subtle in the sense that like you'll open a browser and it'll say like, I don't know, there'll be a link that's at the top of the 10 blue links that's nearby as opposed to a pop-up when you open your phone that says, check this out now?
I think, it's so new that it's hard to speculate on what the right UI is. But I do think that a lot of times with a new medium, you really need to start out somewhere more explicit rather than less explicit. Right? It's sort of interesting. I haven't gotten to go to a show this time, but when I like Broadway musicals, and when you go to see a Broadway musical, like it turns out I really don't like the revivals. And one of the reasons I don't like the revivals is because they have to be super explicit. Right? They just don't try and say something with a look. Like they have a whole scene change where someone says like, will I ever see him again?
Right.
And I do think like the same thing is true in technology when you're designing a new interface, at least in the beginning, so people understand what are you doing, why are you doing it, what does it mean for me? You need to be more explicit, and then later you can be more subtle. So exactly the right way to weave it in, I don't think we quite understand yet, and we still need to figure that out, but I do think that at least in the beginning, just to make sure people really understand what's going on, because we want to be very clear and transparent with users, it probably will be more explicit.
Great. All right, so I think I'm being told that we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us once again and for coming to TechCrunch Disrupt.
Thank you very much for having me.